for everyone's awareness. So what you're seeing is the home screen for VSys. And right now, it's a little tiny. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here on the left to user preferences. And this is a tip for those folks who are VSys users. You can adjust your font size here. Make it a little bigger, make it a little easier for you guys to see the screen today. And I also like these top two options. Prevent back from becoming closed and show a confirmation prompt when closing. It can get really easy to get click happy in the software and accidentally close it. And that's going to save you a little grief along the line. So we'll change those. And now we've got something a little bigger to see. The center part of your screen is going to be your action area. That's really where the stuff you're working on is going to be. And then the left-hand side is your navigation. You can see at the top, I've got a recent tools. It's bringing up all of the things that I've been working with recently. So if I've just been doing one task, go somewhere else, I can hop back to the last thing I was working on. It's fairly what we call sticky, in that it will remember settings as you're going back and forth through things. And the other important thing to notice is this little help panel down here. You've got a link to get to your support numbers, which, as Joan mentioned, is something we're really very proud of. We have a great team of people who understand volunteering, they understand the software, and they're at the end of a phone line if you've got a question. But you can also get to help documents, online documentation, links to webinars, things like that in here. So when I think about volunteer programs, it really comes down to two things: your people, who you have, and what they're doing when they're with you. Now, there's some things that cross between those, like compliance and evaluation and all, but really two halves to it: your people and what they do. So I'm going to start by looking at my people. And I'm just going to bring up my profile here. Now, let's face it, 50% of the functions of any good volunteer management software is going to be the same. If your system can't keep track of who your people are, what they're doing, track their hours, I mean, that's the minimum that any software should be doing. And then you start getting into what's pickier. What do you need for your organization? Is emailing from the system important? Is sending text messages? Is being able to do online training? That's where you start differentiating between the different softwares. And that's what you need to start looking at in terms of what is useful. So here I'm not even clicking into my profile yet. We can get a quick look at who I am. We can see some information about my hours, my assignments. So there's some quick information to make sure we've got the right Melissa Bergen before we even open this up. I'm going to click in. And when I click into this, you're going to see a lot of information about me. Now, you're also going to notice a little orange box popped up here. That's tied to something we call an eligibility checklist. So that orange box tells me as I open up this profile that I'm missing something that I need for compliance. It's just sort of a little warning there as you go through. But otherwise, this is going to track everything about me as a volunteer. My name, who I'm involved with, a specific site, a specific program. We can track information about interviews. If you're using our online product, VSys Live for the volunteer portal, you can have volunteers sign up for interviews, be able to track it through, track their responses, if they showed, if they didn't. But you know what? If you don't do interviews, or if you don't put people into your VMS until after they've passed an interview stage, it doesn't matter to you. So look for the things that matter. We can track interviews, we can track trainings. Certifications are a compliance piece between background checks and certifications. So in this case, I've got a valid volunteer waiver. We can see my CPR certification expired, and it's really expired. It's been a while. I don't see a volunteer agreement or form, but let's pop this up to the top here. There we go. So I've got an ID tag that's valid. I've got a photo release that's valid. I've got a volunteer agreement that's valid. So we can see those pieces. We also have a lot of flexibility in custom fields. Basically, anything that we don't have a built-in field for, we can create a custom field. That can be a drop-down, it can be a radio button, it can be text, whatever is the best way to record that. It works just like any other field in the system. So you can report on it, you can filter on it, you can use it as a criteria for something. So well over the years, we have come up with a lot of things that people have needed. Some of them are things that something new always comes up. And things can always be added. For example, I'm working with several clients right now who are in the discussions of what their COVID requirements are going to be. Mm-hmm. Do they need to have a new sign-off documentation? Is it part of their annual education? Is it something separate? You know, if you're recording, do you have to record vaccinations? Who do you have to record vaccinations from? You know, all of those types of pieces all can be added and subtracted and changed as we go through. I mentioned the eligibility checklist, that orange box that popped up that said I was out of compliance. Let's see where I stand. So technically, as a new volunteer, I'm 40% of the way there. I've got my volunteer waiver, my agreement, my orientation. I am missing my COVID vaccination. I'm missing my background check, and I don't have an interview. Again, all of this information is drawing from the profile. So it's reportable. You can get a feel for how long people are taking to complete your onboarding process, you know, or just watch it as a way to say, okay, who is in and out of compliance? And that's going to be dynamic. Even though we say new volunteer, if we've got something that expires partway through and it hits the expire point, they're basically going to fall off of that again. All of the basics I said, we can do hours, we can do positions, those types of things, trainings. Probably the next thing from this, though, is how does that work with the schedule? And schedule needs in healthcare are all over the place. VSys looks at three things. The first thing is what we call a job assignment or a job association. So if I go into my job association panel here, close this one, open this one, here we go. We can see I'm connected to the Central Region Visits, the gift shop. At one point, I was on the emergency room support team. I am active at the information desk. These are basically the things that people are connected to. And by being connected to them, you can pull them up as lists of people for coverage to know who's involved. If you need to report or message everybody who is active at the information desk, you can use that as a criteria. It also gives them a way to record their hours so that if you're using the kiosk or volunteer portal, you can then say, okay, I'm here to do X, check in, check out, get rid of the paper sign-ins and tracking. This is great for places where you need flexibility, where schedules change quickly, where you've got people who tend to work flex schedules, or perhaps people who are working remotely that aren't on a locked down schedule time. One place we frequently see it with our healthcare clients is something like pastoral care, where they may come in as needed and stay as long as needed for that situation. Now, the other side of that would be a job assignment. And an assignment says that people are expected at a certain place at a certain time to do a specific thing. So in this case, if we look at my profile, we can see that I come in every Saturday from 9 to 1 to do the Central Region Visits route. Advantage to this is we can predict when I'm coming in. And if we look at the system, we can at 9:30 on Saturday morning, we can see, am I here? Am I gone? Am I missing? It helps you be able to run those reports to say how many people showed up, how many people were you expecting, do you have certain departments that are running high rates of absenteeism. Once the system knows what to expect, it can start looking for holes in it to help you evaluate things. It also means you can share schedules. It means you can predict, really. And this is great for those areas that need coverage. If you're concerned about your information desk, if you're concerned about your emergency department coverage. Now, this is going to let you see that real schedule to know who you've got and where they are. Now, the third side of that we'll take a look at in a minute are what we call slots, and those are your needs of where you need people. But pretty basic information about who this person is, what she's doing, how she's connected. Is she a volunteer? Is she a supervisor? In this case, I'm a supervisor. Is someone a teen, an intern? Different programs have different needs for how things have to be categorized. So it's really trying to work with what your program does rather than give you a solution that has everything totally prefabricated. Any questions about people before we start flipping over to schedules? Anything that you're not seeing or wondering about how to do? Either toss in chat, or if you're unmuted, unmute yourself to mention it.
I know we just started putting everyone under job associations, and I'm trying to remember why. I think it was because there was so much popping in to fill in here and there outside of the regular schedule, so we just use that completely.
And honestly, you're not unique.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks just use the job associations. Some places are under pretty tight mandates to know ahead of time those schedules for who's in facilities.
Mm-hmm.
So those folks will build out full schedules,
mm-hmm.
and honestly, they spend a lot more time moving people around,
yeah,
as you said. I think from my perspective, I'm encouraging people to kind of go to a hybrid if possible.
Mm-hmm.
Think about those places where it would be helpful to be able to see coverage. And it may not be your whole program, but maybe there's a couple positions, transport, information, wayfinders, those types of positions, where it might be helpful to be able to have something a little more fixed to look at as you're trying to make sure you've got what you need. You certainly don't need to use all of it.
Yeah.
And I will say right from the beginning here, I am not a fan of reinventing the wheel just because the software does something. If you work with the processes that are working for you right now. If you're looking at a VMS, look for the ones that will help you solve a problem, but just changing process for the sake of the software being able to do it, I'm not a favor of it.
Mm-hmm.
Why? To me, it's a waste of time. Make the software work for you. So that flip side of the volunteers is what they're doing with you. Now, we've got a couple of different ways to look at this, and it really depends on who you are and how you see things. So I'm going to go over to jobs, and you're going to notice in the top we've got a couple things in calendars, and a couple in assignments. Now, JobSlot's calendar tool, for me, is the easiest way to see things. Now, I've got way too much stuff on here, so I am going to narrow this down to just a few things, like my friendly visitor routes. And I want to put a couple extra days on here. I'm only seeing one. Let's see the next 3 days. And now we've got a visual look at things. Now, as I said, your slots are your needs. So in this calendar, we've set up slots for how many people we need. So at noon on Wednesdays, I need 3 people to do Route 3. At noon on Thursday, I need 3 people, noon on Friday. And we get a bit of a visual indicator here that we've got 2 of 3, so it's yellow. Our thermometer is about 2/3 of the way up. Tomorrow we're good. We need 3 people. We have 3 people. And as I hover over, I can see who's covering that shift. And then again on Friday, I can see I've only got 2 who I've got. And I've got that look of being able to see where do I need to plug some people in. Now you're going to notice there's a few here that are floating outside. And these are simply assignments. In this case, these people's assignments match up when you need them to be there. In this case, Elsie is actually coming in from 2 to 5. She's doing the same thing, but it's not part of that need that we've established. Same thing over here. I've got 2 of them by 3 people during the daytime. Well, Alexandra's coming in the evening. So you don't have to limit your people to where you might say you have needs, but it is a way to give you a visual cue of what's happening. Now for me, as I said, I'm visual. This is very easy for me to understand. I can see the times, I can see the colors. Makes sense. Some folks do better with the advanced version. And in this case, I'm showing all of my their assignments, and let's narrow it down to the same thing we saw over there so it looks the same. Now, look, it looks a little bit different, but we can see here for tomorrow, we have our 3 people, 3 out of 3, and then that one for Elsie in the evening. Again, it's how it works for you visually. In this case, we can see our yellow is there. Our green is here to tell us about the whole slot. Benefits to this one, I can print right from this. I can add people. I can move things around. Personally, I find it a little harder to read, but if we switch maybe to a monthly or a weekly calendar, it gives us some more flexibility in terms of being able to show name formats and other pieces of information. It's what works for you. And then we've also got a list version. So in this case, if you're better off reading a table, I can now see which ones are filled, which ones aren't, how many I need. It's going to tell me down at the end how full it is, how many more I need. It's really the best way for you to see it. And at the same time, we can run a report. We can put up through the system to see who's missing. It's your workflow. And it's finding the one that works for you. We really try to give you options on those things. Now, 2 other pieces on things. Letters and emails. The system has a complete mail merge tool in it, meaning we can merge together a message and the data. Think your old Word and Excel mail merges. Kind of the same idea. You get your letter template is your message, and we can merge that to different pieces of information. I'm just going to grab my thank you one in here because I know I've got a thank you one here. There we go. Thank you, and thank you, General. What we have here is our message. Think about it from a snail mail point of view. You're going to send somebody a congratulations card. Your card is your message. That's the first thing you're going to worry about is that card, signing it, what it says. If you need to add an extra note to it, that's your message. Once we have the message, in this case, it's going to very generic thank you message. Anything here in little red carrots, we're pulling that in from the database. So I really hate to use the term form letter, but yeah, we're talking about form letters. The strength is where we can pull that information so that we can rerun them again and again. So in this case, we've got space for a logo. It's going to pop in the current date. It's going to pop in the information about who it's being sent to. So I'm going to hit preview over here just so we get a look at this. And this preview button, if you're sending letter templates, is like one of the best things because it lets you really see what you're going to send out here. We can see where it has plugged in that information. It plugged in the information about what I do, my central region visits. And this gives us a sample of what would go out. Now, two best ways to use these. Either you need to send stuff to a lot of folks. Okay, you need to send it to all 500 volunteers. Or it's something like a compliance piece that every month you've got 25, 30 emails you're sending. Or every time a new applicant comes into your program. This gives send an email with, okay, these are your next steps. And we can add attachments to this. So a new applicant comes in, basically click that letter template. It's going to personalize it for them and send it out with those attachments of what they need to do next. Those things where you're constantly pulling up an email message, copying it from sort of your standard little database of emails and plugging it in there and resending it, that's like the perfect example of when to use a letter template. Now, one trick for those folks who are using letter templates, if you haven't done it, up here in other, yes, I would make yourself a letter template. So this is very basic. It's just got my, basically, I'm plugging in the date, dear, name of the person, and then I'm putting my signature file stuff at the bottom. If I wanted to put some type of letterhead image in here, I could. When I build it, I'm going to look in my letter template properties, and I'm going to set up my email sender name. I'm going to send up my reply to address. So once I have this in here, if something comes up that I need to quickly write a letter, I can just copy it, give it a new name, and let's say in this, I'm going to do a specific example on this because we can look at it later. Let's say I'm going to call this exposure risk. Not a nice thing, but something we're all having to be aware of these days. When I set up my template, I just made the subject change this so I would remember. So I will put in whatever my email subject header is going to be here. And save it. Now I've already got my top, my bottom. All I have to do is put in my information in the middle. And I'm ready to go. So shortcut for you folks on doing that.
Melissa, how did you copy the one to the other?
Okay, let me show you that. Actually, I'm just going to finish typing that. So I know that's there. Okay, I'm going to hit save. Okay, any of your letter templates in here, right-click, and you've got an option to copy it.
Okay. All right.
And this works basically the equivalent of doing like a save as in Word. You're not going to touch your original. And you're basically getting another copy that's already set up. So once you do your first one, then just copy from there and you've got a shortcut to making more.
Okay.
Now, once we have that message, we can send it to one person. We can send it to many people. The mail merge will allow you to basically pick criteria for, I want everybody who's a current volunteer and who is in the job areas that are in information desk, wayfinding, and emergency room, because they're the people who have to know this. Or maybe it's something based on a location. I need everybody who's over at building X because they're going to shut down the parking garage next weekend. And we need to let them know where to park. Any of that information that's either in the position or the person, we can use that as an identifier to get this message. Or it may just be everybody who's active in your system. We've also got options down here for mailing labels if you need to do the snail mail. And when you merge things, you have an option to basically email it to everybody who you can and then print out paper copies or labels for the folks that you can't reach. So just, sometimes if it's really important, we've had a few of those in the last 15 months. That's a good way to get, because we've all got a handful of volunteers that we don't have emails for, or even if you do, you just know they're not checking it. So any questions on anything you can do communication-wise? I didn't mention the fact we can also connect to a service called Twilio. They are a provider that basically connects the software to a text messaging system. So if you wanted to be able to text message reminders or anything like that, you can also text message from the system. Please feel free to toss out questions, folks. Toss them into chat if you don't want to interrupt the flow on things. So we've looked at people, we've looked at schedules. We've talked about communication because that falls into both compliance, it falls into schedules, it falls into just plain keeping your program running. You need to get the word out about things. So the last piece I want to look at before we kind of tie this together is reports. Because if you can't get the information out when you need it, then it's not any help to you at all. So you'll notice we've got 3 boxes up here on the top left. Tools and reports will jump you to things you can do in the system. So if I type in hours up here, you're going to see I get all of the things to do with hours. And if I can't remember what that specific tool was called, I wanted to do something where there was a way to take their assignment and use that to give them their hours if they forgot to check in. What is that called? Just putting in hour, I get the list and I can see, oh, credit hours from assignment. That's going to jump me over. Maybe I was looking for an hour summary report, or if you've got folks who are submitting their hours online through a volunteer portal, you want to be able to approve them. You don't want those to automatically count.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we've ever seen anybody type in 40 instead of 4 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But just that keyword search at the top, that can help you jump you to wherever you need to be. Middle one is people, and the third one is that find a report down here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, VSys has got about 215, I think, reports, last I knew. Some of them can be Excel files, some of them are PDFs, some can come out in either format. You can create your own, you can edit. There's a lot of flexibility with reporting. But as I said, if I can't find what I need, it doesn't do me any good. So I'm going to go to monthly hour summary to show you this one. This is probably my #1 go-to report. So I'm just going to click monthly hour summary, and I'm going to hit select. So I'm going to pick a time window on this. If I don't, it is going to go back to the beginning of time for my system, and you guys may be going for a cup of coffee before I get the report pulled up. So I'm just going to make this for so far this year. So basically first 6 months roughly. I'm not even going to touch anything else here. Now, I always run my reports to screen. If you notice on the left hand, I've got a little screen here. There's options, excuse me, for other formats, but you can also get to those after screen. So I always run to screen because then I can see it and decide if I want to do anything with it. Let me make this a little bigger. Now, this is a basic monthly hour summary. And to explain to you what we're seeing here, we're breaking out by month. Count is the number of hours records. So for most folks, this will be the number of shifts, the number of times people came in. If you're putting in 1 hour's record for the whole month, manually crediting it that way, numbers will be a little different. But usually count is pretty close to the number of times you had volunteers come in, especially if you're using like a kiosk to check in and out. Those 1,518 shifts accounted for 7,027 hours. Using the current independent sector guidelines for monetary amount, it comes in at $262,807 for value. Now we can see that was done by 221 different volunteers, and it's the equivalent of 41 FTEs. Now, this volunteer column is going to be unique. You'll notice I've got 221 here. I've got 224 here. I've only got 4 so far in June. Adding those all up or even trying to average them is not going to make 227, but that's because people may have been here 1 month left, somebody new started. It's looking at it being unique in each of these lines. Now, my favorite way to see this information, I'm going to hit close, is I like to get this a little more granular into the departments and the positions. So I've set up a bookmark up here. Basically, anything you do in VSys that either produces a report or a screen or a merge, you can bookmark that for easy reference. So let's say it's the end of the month or the beginning of the month. I need to run this for last month. I can just come up to my bookmark and grab my monthly hours report. So I've got a monthly hours summary here. I'm just going to open it up. I have a little reminder, share this with Angela after I run it. Okay. And now you can see I've broken it out 2 more levels by job group and job. And I'm only running it for 1 month up here at the top.
Melissa, I want to make sure you see that there's a chat question about how the value is calculated. Is it by position, from Elaine?
Oh, thank you. I have chat open and I did not see that, so thank you. That's
Well, it's hard when you're in the middle of things, so I'm sorry to interrupt.
no. My last chat message was at before we started. So thank you for saying that, Lisa. We are using the independent sector general value at this point. Right now, at this point, I have it just set for the whole system. So it's the lower monetary amount. You can set it by position as well. Or you can set it at here it is for the baseline, and then these 6 positions, we're going to override it with a higher value. So either way. However, pretty much however you want to calculate it, we can make it calculate it. So in this point, we've broken this down now. We've now got it by department. We can see the shifts by department, subtotaled by the level here. Now, as I said, a lot of these, if you tried to add them up, are not going to make that count. But somebody who shows up in one line here is going to be here. Somebody who shows up in the count here is going to be here. But when we get down to the very bottom, it's a unique count. They're only going to show up once. As I said, this is one of my go-tos just because it's a really fast way to say, okay, how many active volunteers did we have last month? 217. If we're defining active as people who donated hours, that's our count. We have a number of others in here, demographics, things like that. If there's something specific you would like to see, please toss it into chat, and we'll take a look at that in a minute or two. But I can print out schedules if I want to see calendars. I'm going to go to my Finder report here, and I'm going to pull up an assignment calendar. My coffee shop one is probably not what I want. Let's run it from the reports page. You'll notice I'm clicking over here to reports. This can be a great way to browse if you're not quite sure what you're looking for, or if you're not sure what the name is. This is going to break it down by different themes for you. Hit cancel because I just want a plain one. And I'm going to say I just want this for those home health jobs that just like we were looking at in the schedule. So I'm going to save it to a PDF. Yeah, I don't have any that are pending approval. And they're a little bit tiny here. I don't see a good way to blow it up, but again, here is our calendar of what we're seeing in the different routes. It's breaking it out by the different positions. That one looks like it's got a lot more stuff on it together. So, as I said, if you can't get the information out to use it, it doesn't help a lot. So last thing I want to show before we go straight into questions is sort of tying all of this together. Different things that I've talked about and how they kind of fit together on things. So I'm going to go into what we call advanced people search. Now, I'll be honest, I use advanced people search almost like reports. because it lets me see things on screen and narrow things down by people. So just for a silly thing, I'm going to say, give me all of my volunteers. I'm going to click this blue add link. That's my filter. I'm going to say find birthday. Okay, so I start type in birth. And yeah, I want to go based on date of birth. I want everybody who's born next month, who's got a July birthday. I'm sorry, my mouse definitely needs a new battery. So July 1st to July 31st. I'm going to check this box, ignore the year portion because I don't have anybody in my system that hasn't been born yet. And I'm going to hit search. And I've got 71 people in my system who have birthdays next month.
Wow.
Now, if this was something I needed to know on a monthly basis, I can save this criteria up at the top. Go up to the top and save it. Mine means it's only for me. General means everyone who's using your system could see it. So if you wanted other people to be able to pull up this list. But there's some really cool right-click options in here. I can work with all of these things on the screen at once. So I could pick all of these people. I think I clicked too far there. Yep, I clicked into a profile. All my people on the screen are selected. And if I right-click again for my selected people, I could print labels. And now I've got birthday labels. Now I've got labels for everybody who's got a birthday next month if I was sending cards.
Cool.
Maybe I've got a letter template already set up for birthdays. Right from here, send a letter, pick my template that's got that birthday message.
Melissa, is there any way to sort that list by the birth date, ignoring the year? You know, because we transcribe that then into our newsletter, but it's not an order, so you can't do 7/8, 7/9, 7/10, because whenever I go to sort it, if you're doing it, it does it by the year.
Yep. Okay. Yes, trick on that. Right now, what you're seeing is the date of birth with the year.
Right.
There is also, if you right-click in this grid, you can show a lot of different things. If you right-click in here about 2/3 of the way down, you can see show columns, and you can add and subtract a lot of stuff to this. You could add emails or phone numbers so it comes up. If gender and person type wasn't important to you and you just wanted to see phone numbers and emails, you can take things off this and add things on it. But when you do date of birth here, you can pick to do this without the year. And then when that column gets on there, then it's a lot easier to sort.
Okay.
Now, tying back a little bit more from some of the things that we've talked about. Do you remember what I said? I said pretty much any information that's in the system can be used as a filter. And I said we could create custom filters or custom fields for things that were in the system. Well, let's work for one that already is in the system. I want to know, based on the hours records and people checking in and out on the kiosk, who was here on May 20th? Because we had an exposure risk. And I know the people who were in my departments here for emergency room and new mom. And I probably also should include my pet therapy folks. They're all over the place. Anyone who was in between, let's say 9 a.m. and noon. So when I hit search, hopefully somebody worked during that shift. Yep, I've got 13 people here who would have been in those spaces around the campus that might need to be notified. Now, I thought ahead while we were talking, and I created an exposure risk letter. So I could go in and edit that. Maybe maybe it isn't completely written, but maybe it's got the information about who to expect to have follow up or anything they need to do to monitor. Right here, these people are on the screen. I can take these selected people, send them a letter, and it was in my other, I think. Yep, exposure risk. And the email can go straight out to those folks to give them a heads up. Now, maybe I've got somebody elsewhere in the organization who needs to know this. If I've got my emails on here, and I'm going to just add that by my columns. Drag that over so that we can see that in the grid easily. And I'm just grabbing it by the column header and moving it over. So now we can see these people. We have their email contacts. Maybe we want their phone up there too. That's an option. And from here, right-click, grid contents, and I can send this right to an Excel file. So if I need to give this list to somebody else, or I could copy it to the clipboard and put it in an email and get this information right here to somebody else in the organization that might need it. Now, when we send that email, it's going to log into these folks' profiles. So we've got a history of it. All those pieces fit together. So we know who they are, we knew where they were, what they did. We had the communication piece in place. And now this is really a variation on reporting to be able to work with them and pull out that data to pass on. So as I said at the beginning, it's really about workflow. It's about what you need to do and how to support how things work in your organization. Now, I gave an example. Your process might be totally different, and that's fine. We can work with you to come up with the process that supports what yours is. So Lisa, anything else in questions that I should be backtracking on? I'm actually going to refresh my chat panel, see if I can, because I'm not seeing anything new in chat.
I think the issue, Melissa, is that people have been sending the chats to host only. And so
okay.
I'm seeing
and when you came in, you bumped me out of host. Got it.
I apologize for that.
That's okay.
I have to admit to everybody that I love attending these webinars because I learn so much every time I do. If you have questions or comments, if you can change the send to all attendees and type them in the chat, please do so. But I will tell Melissa that right now there's no other comments in the chat. So I'm curious if there's something folks are really curious and want to see.
Or if you're a VSys user and you've got a burning, how do I, sit out there, please.
This one might be a whole separate topic, but at this time, we give people a handbook, all the paperwork, they bring it all back, we enter the information to get our certification dates and addresses and everything, and then we scan it, upload it to VSys to save it. Is there anything else to make that piece easier in this version of VSys that we have to upload the information from application forms? I feel like I spend my life feeding my database,
Unfortunately, when you're talking about VSys 1, no. You've kind of got the best way to do things there. Are you dragging and dropping things? Can you do that with your configuration?
We have not been, no. We type in everything.
Okay. It's going to depend how your system is configured. And it's some folks it works, some folks it doesn't. Two things to try. If you've just got the scan on your desktop, and unfortunately I can't show you a scan on that, but if you've got a scan on your desktop, I can sort of show you, bring it over, you may be able to just drag it over on the person's name and release it to add the scan.
Oh, gotcha. You have both windows open.
Yep.
Yep.
Or you may be able to right-click, copy it, and paste it onto them.
Instead of saving it and then uploading it.
Yep. So in this case, I've copied. Let's see if it'll let how my system is here. No, I can't do that from the way this particular setup is set. Again, that's something that's going to depend on your configuration.
Okay.
Now, I am going to say the dangerous thing. I mentioned volunteer portal. Every VSys contract comes with VSys Web, which will allow you to take an application in and do basic onboarding. VSys Live is the full volunteer portal. This does give your volunteers the option to upload stuff straight to you.
Okay.
So I'm going to log in quickly as my friend Beth here. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because that's not, really where we're supposed to be today. But we can see she's currently checked in, and from here she can see her schedule. She could pick up shifts. If you were using the slots that I was talking about for coverage, she could see where you needed people to pick up things. She could also do an online training.
Okay.
So we've seen more and more folks want to actually put their trainings out where people don't have to come into the facility.
But you said most healthcare providers are not using this version. Is that right?
Actually, VSys Live, yes.
Yes, they are.
VSys Live, I would say, with our healthcare folks, we're getting pretty close to a 50-50 split.
Okay.
It's definitely pushed the last year as more folks are getting to the point of, yes, we want people to upload their documents. Yes, we want people to take their trainings and not come into the facility but still stay compliant. As we started to say at the beginning, we're all hitting a little bit of Zoom fatigue, but at the same time, a certain section of your volunteers are looking to be able to sort of self-manage on their own time.
Yeah.
So it goes both ways.
I like it.
Now, I did see something pop through about show me how to make the orange box.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we call an eligibility checklist. There is a webinar up on our website about it. I covered it a couple of months ago. But basically, the idea is that
message from Rebecca, nothing about VSys Live.
Basically, you pick what the person needs to be compliant. So in this case, they need a certification that's a volunteer waiver. And I can pick what the expiration dates need to be for it to be valid, or maybe it has to say complete. It all depends on how you track your certifications. It needs a background check and it has to be verified or whatever. Basically, right-clicking in here, I can add, and I can pick whatever they need to fulfill that. Application forms, attachments, if it's something they'd have to upload, certifications, maybe they need an interview, do they need a training? And there's options to do what we call complex rules. So let's say you have both junior and adult volunteers. The junior volunteers don't need the background check, but the adults do. So maybe you say for that level, either they have a background check or they're under 18. Or maybe it's a different set of paperwork if they're a junior. they need either the interview or they need the teacher recommendation. So you can pick and sort of balance what the pieces are they need to be able to complete that. And I didn't catch who posted that, but please reach out to me. I can direct you to the webinar, and if you've got other questions about it, I'd be happy to talk about it and how to set that up. Okay, that one came through. Let me try doing my chat panel here. Nope. I am not getting anything else. Lisa, anything that I have missed?
No. Elaine's intrigued by VSys Live. I put a link in there for her. Lynn said thank you for showing the orange box. Nobody else has said anything that I see in chat.
Okay.
You're pretty much at time, Melissa.
Yeah, that's about where we thought we'd be wrapping up today. So thank you for joining us. If there are questions, and I know folks, are going to think about things after, if you're a VSys client, please give a call into tech support. You'll also see my email after this as well. So if it's a generic, hey, we were thinking about, please feel free to reach out to me. If it's something that's time critical, ooh, I really want to try to, I need to get this done and I have to, please reach out to the support folks. They are going to be able to help you in a much more timely manner than I am. My call schedule can go bonkers sometimes. Lisa, did you toss your email in the chat so that if anyone has any more sort of product questions, they can reach out to you on that? We kind of threw Lisa in here. She joined in a little bit late. She is with our business development team, Vice President of Business Development. Yeah, I'm going to spit out. So if you have product or more sales type questions, she can definitely help you with that.
Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. I know I've got some tips and tricks that will help me.
You've also given me some really good ideas. I think our July webinars from the technical aspect aren't going to happen, but I think August, I think I'll dive back into tips and tricks and go into some, as I said, I didn't want to go into some of the real nitty gritty with some folks on the call who aren't VSys users. I don't want anyone to get overwhelmed, but that's probably a really good encouragement for me to formalize some of this and think about what some of those things are that might really help people out. Put those on next month's webinar.
Yep, just the birth date year thing has been worth the whole hour.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, folks. As always, if there's anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out.